Hey guys, my name is Evan, and my two words are afraid and accepted. I grew up in a really loving household to two Christian parents who were passionate about loving God and living for Him. From a young age, I remember them sharing many times about what Jesus had done in dying for my sin, and that was significant for me. But throughout my childhood and really up through high school, there was something about my understanding of God that I think was missing. I had this underlying, kind of subconscious core belief that in order for me to be right with God, or in order for me to keep God happy with me, I had to pursue being a good person and do my best not to sin. And if I did sin, I needed to work hard and really try not to do it again. And at the same time, growing up, I often felt like an outsider toward others around me. I remember moving to a new town, and throughout much of my teenage years, I really felt unloved and unaccepted by my peers. And I longed to be liked and accepted by them. And so I would often say and do things, whatever I could, to try to gain their approval. So there's this competition in me that often arose. I could either do my best not to sin and keep God happy with me, or I could do my best to try to gain the approval of others by saying and doing whatever pleased them. And unfortunately, this left me pretty lonely and very afraid. I was deeply afraid because I was afraid that God was angry with me and that He was unapproachable because I was choosing not to live for Him. And I felt that no matter how hard I tried, I could never do enough to earn or maintain God's acceptance of me through my performance. And I was deeply lonely and empty feeling because I was afraid of my peers doing my best to gain their adoration. And it was never successful. If it was successful, it was quickly lost and it needed to be maintained. However, right before college, God was working in my life in a really significant way. And I remember wanting to actually really know Him and live for Him. And so when I came to college, I was looking for Christian community. And I got involved in Crew, and man, I got so much more than I ever expected. Remember one afternoon, my freshman year, the first fall semester, a friend who was in Crew, and I went out to grab coffee. And via the use of napkin illustrations, I remember that he just really clearly explained to me the gospel. That even though all throughout my life I had ran from God and chose to live apart from Him, seeking the approval of others, that Jesus loved me and He gave Himself for me. And Jesus came to live the life before God that I could never live. And in fact, He traded places with me. He took all of my failure upon Himself. He died in my place. And then He gave me His perfect right standing before God as a loved son for free as I trusted Him. And this radically changed my life. It radically freed me from being afraid of God, because if Jesus was rejected so that I could be accepted in God, then I really wanted to know Him. I wanted to truly love Him and live for Him. And this freed me from my fear of people, because if in view of God's acceptance, which never changes based on my performance that day or season that year, in view of that acceptance, man's acceptance of me seemed so trivial and insignificant in comparison. Because I'm secure in God's love, I'm actually free to love others with God's acceptance as opposed to seeking their approval. Now, the reality is often on even a daily basis in varying degrees, I can still struggle with these things and wrestle with them. And I'll probably continue to. But the difference is now I know the truth about who God is and what God has done for me in Jesus, and how that will never change, even if I fail to believe it for a time. And I get to come to Him day after day to be reminded of what He says is true of me, what He's done for me, and how He's called me to a new life of knowing Him and making Him known. Cool. Thanks for watching, guys.